Naughty Dog has been the undisputed masters of Sony hardware, and the post-apocalyptic magnum opus that was The Last of Us games has remained a technical masterpiece. That was true when the first game released back in 2013. And it seems we've now come full circle once again, after so many years, as the developer is returning to its roots once again with a full-fledged remake of the first game rebuilt from the ground up on the PS5. Despite the many improvements this version brings when compared to the original incarnation, The Last of Us Part 1 finds itself in a rock and a hard place as far as gameplay improvements are concerned. In addition to the improvements on the graphical front, there are some subtle improvements on the gameplay sides of things as well, though that doesn't amount to much when looking at the whole picture. But in this feature, we'll be focusing on the graphical end of the game and comparing it with the remastered version on the PS4 in an effort to see what improvements this version is bringing to the table.
Stop! Ugh.
Quit your squirming. You were saying?
I sold him.
Excuse me.
I didn't have much of a choice. I owed someone.
You owed us. I'd say you bet on the wrong horse.
As you can easily gauge from a brief look at the two versions of The Last of Us, the PS5 version looks a lot darker than the PS4 remaster when it comes to the choice of colors. The Last of Us Remastered doesn't shy away from using macabre colors like brown and gray, but that is balanced out with the abundant use of green for the overgrowing foliage in the environments. The PS5 version ends up being really conservative with its color palette, and the colors are a lot more muted, which makes the environment feel drab, dreary, and more hostile than before. Of course, this is an artistic change that's not reflective of the game being downgraded in any sense. Putting The Last of Us Remastered and The Last of Us Part 1's environment side by side, we can see that most of the level geometry and props are the same, but the actual assets have been rebuilt with higher quality textures which result in a more cleaned up look than the original. That said, because the geometry of the levels have remained the same, they can still end up feeling a bit unpolished and crude at times with some rough edges sticking out from places. It might not be immediately noticeable, but it's a difference that one can notice when pitting the games side by side. Then there are the character models, which have gotten a significant facelift in the PS5 version when compared to the PS4 remaster. The character models now boast markedly more detail than the original counterpart, which also has a downside in that some characters now look a lot older than before.
He's close with his brother Tommy. Said if I was ever in a jam, I could rely on him.
Was that before or after he left your little militia group?
He left you too. He was a good man.
I could just take her to the North Tunnel and wait for me there.
Joel now has more visible wrinkles in his face, and the same could be said about Tess. On the flip side though, Bill seems a lot younger in this new rendition. Ellie's character model has also been updated to retain similarity with the original. Poly counts for these character models are incredibly high, with highly detailed facial hair and skin meshes, and they all look spectacular in this new format. The Last of Us Remastered uses a mixture of pre-calculated ambient lighting data along with sparse use of directional lights and shadows for most of its environmental lighting. The remake also seems to be utilizing the same lighting techniques, and the quality of lighting is in line with what one can expect from a modern game, complete with the additional cinematic lights that serve the purpose of adding more depth and definition to the character models during cutscenes. With that said though, the cinematic lights in the remake seem to be a lot softer in nature.
You know, Sam's the one who spotted you. You guys are taking quite a bit of water.
Henry! Get back, son!
Hey! He's pissed, but he's not gonna do anything.
You sure about that?
Stop!
Joel?
He left us to die out there.
No, you had a good chance of making it, and you did. But coming back for you meant putting him at risk. Stay back.
There are some more improvements with respect to lighting and reflections as well. Surfaces such as roads and the sides of buildings now reflect nearby environmental light sources like police sirens and rising flames with varying intensities depending on their reflective properties, which culminates in a more realistic feel when compared to the remastered release. There's no evidence of ray tracing and reflections in shadow maps, but because the game's environment's lighting doesn't dynamically change all that much, the lack of ray tracing doesn't really have an impact on the end result and the game still looks great nevertheless. Particle effects have seen a massive improvement with the remake, with a lot more alpha particles per explosion. The flames also look far more realistic than the original, and the volumetric smoke that surrounds the flames is also thick and diffuses light from its surroundings. As for anti-aliasing, The Last of Us Remastered used Naughty Dog's signature TAA implementation that worked to great effect in smoothing out the image quality without showing visible signs of artifacts during gameplay. Unsurprisingly, the developer has stuck to its roots for the remake and seems to have used the same TAA implementation along with the natural improvement that the Naughty Dog engine has seen over the course of almost a decade. That said, the game does look sharper, which is most likely a result of the higher base resolution on which the TAA pass is performed. Briefly touching upon the animations, the cinematic animation data in The Last of Us Part 1 seems to be a one-to-one replica of that of The Last of Us Remastered, albeit with an added element of camera shake. The characters' movements in cutscenes is the same, which isn't a surprise since no motion captures were redone for this project. But there are major improvements in the facial animations which add more emotional weight. On the gameplay front, we now get the spectacular motion matching technique which makes for seamless animations that blend well into one another. This improvement is more pronounced in sections featuring Ellie, though you can also spot some differences with the way how Joel now goes about things as well. On that note, we should also talk about the performance. The Last of Us Part 1 is an interesting candidate for Naughty Dog because it's the developer's first release from the ground up in many years to have launched with support for 60 FPS gameplay. The game features two graphical modes, a fidelity mode and a graphics mode. The fidelity mode bumps the image resolution to 4K and locks the frame rate to 30 FPS, while performance mode knocks down the resolution to dynamic 4K and bumps the frame rate over to 60 FPS. In addition to this, you can also adjust a couple of sliders, such as motion blur, camera shake intensity, and film grain to get a better personalized experience for your playthrough. It's all basic stuff, but it's appreciated nevertheless. The game performs well for the most part in both modes, which shouldn't come as a surprise considering that the PS5 is much more powerful than the PS4, and the improvements featured in the remake are iterative rather than radical. In conclusion, The Last of Us Part 1 is a faithful remake of the original, and the many improvements on the visual and gameplay front have been done in an effort to make the game fall in line with current-gen standards. Hey, did you know that we at Gaming Bolt upload new videos every day? Stick around, drop a like, hit that bell, subscribe, and let us know what kind of content you'd like to see in the future with a comment below.